of the demo, but very important part where we are going to build up the next part of the stack and over what we have already done so far, right? So in the last video I said that we are going to use Jenkins for some of the command line tasks that we used to repeatedly do in order to run the tests in containers, in order to deploy the Selenium Docker test scripts into the Docker container, build the image, pull the image and make a container out of it, run the test using Docker Compose, see the test results in the output, right? So all these heavy lifting job, right, in a scalable manner, we said we will use Jenkins. Okay, so there are two main things. That's what we will see in this video. There are two parts into where Jenkins can help us, or there are two main important tasks if you look at the logically, right? So one is now I can move all my code to Git repository. So which I have already done in the background. I will just show it. I mean, I'm not going to Git commands and all that. I mean, you're all very familiar with that. I will flash it in a moment. All the files that we are seeing in on the local Linux instance is you move to the Git repository now. Okay, so from the Git repository, you will have one important file, that is Jenkins file, that contains the your pipeline, the logic to kind of build the pipeline script, and then you will create a Jenkins pipeline job. Okay, and this job, what it will do is it will pull your latest code from Git repo of the test script, and then it will make a it will make a build using Maven, and then it will create a Docker file. Sorry, it will create a Docker image, and then it will push the Docker image into the Docker Hub registry. So Docker Hub is a universal registry. You can have private registry there, or public registry. So for now, for demo purpose, I'm using public. So ultimately, Jenkins will help you every time you have update to your test scripts. It will help you to kind of pull that latest code through a build job, and then push the latest Docker image into the registry. Okay, so we will see the Jenkins configuration and all of this in action as before, but this is conceptually one part of the job that Jenkins can help us to do. Okay, so the second part of the job, which we will see in a while later, is that once the image is pushed into the Docker Hub, right? So Jenkins will also help us to kind of pull the latest image from Docker Hub and build a container out of it, and then execute the test scripts which we have seen before, right? So that's the second exactly converse use of Jenkins. So there are two important things or two important aspects to note here. One is all my code is going to reside in the GitHub repository, or it could be Bitbucket, or it could be GitLab, or whatsoever, right? So it's going to be in the code repository. So from the code repository, in an automated way, or by single click or whatever, right? The Jenkins is going to have a build job, pipeline job, which will actually run on a Docker, on a slave node which has Docker installed on it. Okay, and then finally it will push the image into the Docker Hub, or the Docker registry. Okay, so this is the first part of it. So we will see that in action. Okay, so now how do you want to have Jenkins installed, right? So there are different ways Jenkins can be brought up. Okay, so you can use, if in your enterprise already you have a Jenkins node that is run. Okay, sorry, Jenkins instance that is running, and you already have a master node and a slave node and all that configuration, and you have been using, then you can as well use that Jenkins for running for doing this job. Or if you, I mean, in my case, what I have done is I have actually set up Jenkins within a container. Okay, so I on this Amazon Linux instance, AWS instance, I already had one Jenkins which was running on 8080. So now what I have done is I have pulled the latest image of Jenkins from Docker Hub, and then I have brought up a container with Jenkins at runtime. That's what you see here, right? And then I have hosted it on port 8090. Okay, so that's how I have done it, and I've done volume mapping and all that, so that every time I bring it down and up, it still retains all the history files and all that. Okay, so this is how I have done it, but you don't have to necessarily do the same way. You can actually use your existing Jenkins instance and all that. Okay, so now um, let me quickly walk through the Jenkins node that I have here. So if I go to build executor status, right, so let us see what are the nodes I have here. Okay, so I have one master node, usually, which comes with the Jenkins master node, which comes with the Jenkins setup, right? And now I have also uh, set up another slave node. Okay, so the slave node is where I am going to, run all my job, and master is only going to give instructions to slave. The reason is that in this Jenkins container, okay, or the master node doesn't have Docker installed on it. Okay, so for running all of my tasks, the only prerequisite, I don't want Maven to be installed. I can pull that image. Okay, I don't want anything else Java to be installed. I can pull that image, but I want Docker to be installed. Okay, so as a prerequisite in order to run the Docker instructions, right? So I have built, what I have done is I have repurposed this AWS instance where Docker is already installed, and I have mapped it as a slave node here, and that's the reason I call it as Docker 1. And let me quickly show you that configuration here. Okay, yeah, call it as Docker 1, and if you see remote root directory is it goes to Jenkins slave jobs, which is on the AWS instance here. Okay, uh, yep. uh, you see this, yeah, you see this, right? So this is what the Jenkins slave node slave jobs are all saved here. Okay, so this is basically the same AWS instance which I have mapped it, and I'm doing SSH using EC2 user, and you can see here also, right, the host, it's the same. Okay, and but again, okay, so I am logging in as EC2 user, but anyway, but again, you can use any, you can configure any node on Jenkins as slave, and you can do it in different couple of different ways. Okay, so only thing that to keep in mind is basically, you should be able to run the you should have Docker installed on that. Okay, so that's the only prerequisite. Other than that, everything is fine, and you should have permissions to the directories and all that, while running the jobs and all that. Okay, so that's about the build executor part. Okay, and I have purposefully put the master build executor to 0, and I want all the jobs to be executed on the slave node, which is Docker 1. Okay, now let us go to the credentials part. Okay, so what are the credentials that I have saved here is, um, as you may expect, one is, I have Git connectivity, right? So the um, yeah, so one, for Git I have used public repositories, so I don't have that Git connectivity here. Okay, it's a public repository. So otherwise I would have that. Usually in your enterprise you'll have the git ssh or the pet key to connect to git. And then this is the login credentials that I have saved here, which I'm using while configuring the slave node. That is my EC2 login credentials here, right? SSH key and PEM file and all that. And the another very important thing is the Docker Hub login. Okay, so what I have done is, I have, while I'm publishing the contain images to the public Docker Hub, right? I need to have a login for my Docker Hub, which I will show you in a moment here, right? Um, this is the public URL of hub.docker.com, and I am logged in here, right? So this username and password, whatever I am providing here, is the same thing I need to do when the Jenkins job is going to connect and push on behalf of me the image, right? So that credential I have, everything is encrypted here, so it's all good. So nothing is plain text password, so that credential is also set up here. Okay, so these are the some of the important things. Nevertheless, you use any type of Jenkins instance, but these are the important configurations that you need to have in place. So that's what I'm walking through. Okay, and not the generic stuff about how to install Jenkins, how to configure nodes, and how to connect to slave master, and likewise boilerplate stuff I am skipping here because it's not a Jenkins training, right? So secondly, I have put all the files into the all the files that we saw earlier in WinSCP, and also on the Linux instance here, right? So I have put I don't think I have it here open now, but I'll show you. I have put it on the GitHub. Okay, so let me go to my GitHub account here. So this is exactly the same files which we have been seeing, right? So the Docker file. The only new file here is the Jenkins file, which I will be explaining in detail. Okay, so what is this file about? How are we going to trigger pipelines job using this Jenkins file and all that? Okay, so excluding this, you should be familiar with all the other files that we have seen, right? This has my complete source of my test script. Okay, so this is what the automation engineers are daily going to update and check in their code, and that's going to come here, right? And then the page objects and the test classes, and likewise, and then the health check script, bomb.xml, and then these modules, right? So all these things uh, come out as a Selenium Docker. That's the kind of automation script repository that I have created. Okay. Okay, so now if I open this Jenkins file, so okay, so the most important part is this Jenkins file. Okay, so which is there in the GitHub repo. I'll show it on VS Code so it is more legible here. So this is the most important thing. Okay, so the Jenkins file that is there or part of the GitHub, if you see here, right? So this Jenkins file gets has all the logic written in that. So to create, I create a pipeline job, which I'll show you in a moment. I'll create a pipeline job here, and then I will point it to this Jenkins file from the GitHub repo. Okay, so this is what is going to, do all the tasks that I was mentioning, right, on the Jenkins. So by Jenkins. Okay, so what is there in this Jenkins file? Let us study, the functionality of this Jenkins file, how to write this file, and what is the purpose, and what exactly are the different parts of it, right? So this is a pipeline script, and then agent I suggest as none. Okay, while testing I had put as docker1, but I have suggested none, but by default it will execute on docker1 slave node because master is set to 0, right? So by anyhow that's going to execute there. And then the stages. So there are 3 stages in this Jenkins file. Okay, so one is, I would say, build jar, and then second stage is build image, and then the push image. These are the three stages within, okay, and we will see each of this, and it should look familiar in concept to what we have done before, okay. So in build jar, what I'm going to do is, okay, I have already downloaded an sorry, I have already downloaded an image of, if you see in here, um, yeah, um, if you see, I have this Maven image, right? So that has been downloaded, Maven 3 Alpine image, right? So sorry, uh, yeah, Maven 3 Alpine image, right? So this image I am going to use, and then I am doing a volume mapping here, so that every time what happens is it will Jenkins is in a container here, right? So it doesn't have so Jenkins is only installed, but it doesn't have Maven. So what it will do is it will pull the latest image of Maven, okay, but and create this container. Okay, so while it is pulling, okay, so every time when it is pulling Maven, right, it doesn't have to download all the plugins dependencies. So that's why we have this volume mapping between the home directory M2 to the root of M2 in the within the container. Okay, so once that is done, so the in the next step what it will do is it will bring up Maven from scratch, and then it will do Maven clean package dskip tests. This is not new to us, right? So this is the shell script that we used to execute on the terminal. So same thing, Jenkins terminal is now Jenkins is going to do this for us. Okay, so that's all is happening as part of build jar. So at the end of this, it will create the jar file. Okay, so now let me see what happens in the build image. So in the build image, okay, so I'm going to run this, it's going to build this image like we used to run docker, um, uh, docker build hyphen t, and then we used to give this selenium docker, right? So and that's what used to build image. So same thing happens here, because this Jenkins file is technically residing in the, if you see in the GitHub, this Jenkins file is residing with this Docker file, right? It's residing with all these other associated files, pom.xml, everything, right? So that's how Maven comes to know that what is written, what are the packages that it needs to download, and plugins that it needs to install. Everything it's reading from here, right? So it's in the same location. So that's why we are co-locating all those things it has to be in the same directory, otherwise it will not run. Okay, so now when you run this, it will basically point to the Docker file which is there in the contain in this location in Git, and then it will build the image. Okay, so this is what happens in this step from the Jenkins. Only the syntax is little different from what we do from command line, and then this app is just a variable. Okay, and now once I build the jar, I build the image. Next I have to push the image. So in push the image, what I do in this script is I connect to the Docker Hub, registry.hub.docker.com, and this Docker Hub login is exactly the uh, where was that? Yeah, yep. If I go to the manage Jenkins, and then if I see manage credentials, we just saw that before, but I just wanted to, yeah, so this is my Docker Hub login. Okay, this is Docker Hub login, so you can name it anything. Okay, so this is the ID, key ID that I give here, which I can use for reference, right? In turn it will get my credentials and replace that with the credential and execute this. It will connect to the Docker Hub and push this image. Okay, so while pushing, if you observe, right, so I'm putting build number, and then once again I'm pushing with the latest tag. Okay, so this build number will help me. We'll see it when we run through the Jenkins. Every time Jenkins creates a new build, there is a build number. So that build number I am tagging it with the Docker image. Okay, so that's one level. Second is every time I push, I also tag it with latest. Okay, suppose I miss the build number to give while I pull, then the latest image is what I will get it always. Okay, but at the same time, if I want to go back and pull some older images, then build number is what will help me to get that particular image. Okay, so that's about the Jenkins file. Hopefully it is clear. Okay, so now I already showed the git repo and this. So now we will see the build job. Okay, how to create the build job. So now if I go here, Selenium Docker builder draft, right? So this is the build job that I have created. So let me go through it. Okay, so the type of job this you have to select is pipeline. Okay, in the Jenkins. So you need to have the latest Jenkins 3. It's not the uh, simple simple kind of jobs that we used to have before, like freestyle jobs and all. This is like a pipeline job. Okay, and then nothing fancy. I mean, these are the only important things that you need to point. So you say pipeline script from SCM, and then you give git here, or any other repository, and then here you point to your repository. Okay, github.com and selenium docker.git. Okay, so it is exactly the same thing what we saw here, right? github.com selenium docker. So you point to the this one, and then there's no credential here. In your case you may have a credential to git, and then you have master, no, master branch, sorry, master branch here uh, by default. And then you say that take the Jenkins file which is out there, right, and then run the pipeline. Okay, so this is the configuration of the build job that is out there. Okay, so now let me go to this build job. Okay, so that's all. I mean, from the explanation perspective, like all the different configurations that need to be there. So now the only thing that is left is to perform this action, right? To perform this action where when I run this build job, it will read this Jenkins file. It will do all the things that is mentioned in the Jenkins file using this node, Docker node, right? So master will give the command to Docker slave node, and then on this slave node, it will connect to the GitHub, pull the Jenkins, read the Jenkins file, pull the image, and then sorry, read the Jenkins file, and then make the build, and then push the image, connect to the Docker hub, and push the image. Okay, first it will create the image, then it will push the image. So those are the three things that is written there will happen, right? So by the end of it, I have my latest automation script in the Docker hub, so that I can then jump to the second part, or the part of this, where I will pull a container using my latest Docker image, and then I execute the test using Docker Compose YAML. Okay, so before that we will just run this job. Okay, so let me come here, dashboard, Selenium Docker build, and I say build now. Okay, and while it is running, yep, now it is. So I will quickly go to the console output and see the things that are going on here, right? So my Jenkins file, it's connected to the Git, it pulled the stuff, and it is reading the Jenkins file. So it is doing the first part of it, right? So it is doing maven clean package, dskip test. It is pulling all the dependencies, reading the POM file, and I think a lot of these things happen. And then, yeah, let me go to the last part. Yeah, it's finished success. So let me come in the reverse order. Okay, so we remember, right? So the last part is the publishing thing. So if you see here, it has published the doc into the Docker hub, right? Docker tag into registry and with the build number 24, right? So and also it should publish with the latest tag also. Okay, so that should also be here. Yes, so it did publish Docker push registry and then hub.docker.com and then Selenium Docker latest, right? So it executed those things. And before push, we can see that where the image was formed and my Docker file was executed exactly. I think let me skip this dependencies thing because there's too much there, so we don't have to go through it. Yeah, this is where my Docker file is getting executed. See, Docker build t Selenium Docker, right? So it's exactly we saw here, 1 2 3. So it's basically, what I'm saying is what we did manually before by running the commands. So Jenkins is just mimicking those actions. Okay, so nothing different. So if it's just an automated way or scripted way of doing things, but technically or logically, the same actions are performed what we used to do and we used to run individual component wise. Okay, so now the build is published and my latest automation script and code, everything is available on the Docker hub. So it's like how I will pull and execute the test, we will see in the next part of the demo, and that should be probably the last. Thanks for watching.